Hey everybody, this is Mike with Free Roaming Hiker, and in this video I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about Paintbrush Canyon in Grand Teton National Park. Now, I've hiked this canyon countless times, so I'm going to fill you in on the best photo ops, campsites, and access to other canyons from Paintbrush Canyon. So unlike similar videos I've done on different canyons in Grand Teton National Park, Paintbrush Canyon is pretty straightforward. There aren't really any other forks to other trails, but that's with one small exception that we'll cover in a little bit. The trail begins along the Stream Lake Loop deep in the woods surrounding the lake. It wraps around to the north of the base of Rockchuck Peak, and then once around the base, it starts cutting west. You get a few significant climbs in there, but much of the first mile and a half or so are pretty easy going. There's a small climb up to a cliff above the rushing creek, and shortly after, you enter the lower Paintbrush camping zone. You'll notice the campsites are marked with a sign, and while most of the sites are forested, there are a couple in there with some really nice views overlooking Lee Lake and Jackson Lake and beyond. You'll cross the creek after several campsites where the views start to open up and large peaks are just all around through a massive boulder field that you begin hiking through. Shortly after, you leave the lower Paintbrush camping zone, and as you keep climbing up, you'll see a large waterfall on your left on the opposite side of the canyon. You'll start making a switch back up where there are incredible views both up and down the canyon. Shortly after that, you're going to reach the Outlier Campsite, which is tucked away in the forest below the trail. This is a single campsite appropriately named the Outlier. Beyond the Outlier Campsite, there are some steep switchbacks that start to gain some significant elevation. It straightens out, but it's still climbing steeply up through close to tree line. At this point, you reach a fork in the trail, and technically both directions are the official trail. Right heads up through the forest to Holly Lake, while left provides some outstanding alpine scenery. And if you're looking for a campsite, left actually enters the upper Paintbrush camping zone a little sooner. Regardless, both connect back up after about 1 mile. Most people are going to go right so they can access Holly Lake, and the climb to Holly Lake is not really that bad as what you've been hiking through. It's still ascending, but the steepness isn't quite as harsh as getting up to that junction. Now, Holly Lake makes for a great destination for a day hike or a stopping point for a little more rest if you're continuing onward. Also, if you're interested in camping in this area, there is a campground near Holly Lake. And just like with any camping in Paintbrush Canyon, you will need a permit from Grand Teton National Park in advance. Heading up from Holly Lake, the trail begins to get a lot steeper once again, and shortly after, you enter the upper Paintbrush camping zone close to the junction with the previous fork. In the upper Paintbrush camping zone, there aren't really any specific sites. You just find a cozy looking place, and potentially other people have camped there, so it should be easy to spot them. The trees are going to start to thin out as you begin nearing the tree line, and from this point on, there is just lots of stunning alpine scenery, and you get a very steep climb for the next mile and a half up to the Paintbrush Divide. There's quite a bit of outstanding alpine scenery the whole way, and you even get a few glimpses into Lee Canyon with the Grizzly Bear Lakes below in the upper reaches of the canyon. You'll also be leaving the upper Paintbrush camping zone as you begin to get above tree line. The trail makes a brutal climb up with some switchbacks closer to the top, and early in the season there could still be some potential snow, and by early in the season I mean June and early July, sometimes even mid-July depending on the season. So check with the visitor center, and if you're hiking prior to that time, you'll probably want to have crampons ready to go and maybe even ice axes to make sure you have good stability. The snow that will be there in this area is very steep, and one wrong step will not be with the direction you want to be going in. Even if there's no snow, there's also a lot of talus and loose rock, so regardless, when you're going up this way, be sure to watch your step. Finally, you'll reach the Paintbrush Divide, which is 10,720 feet above sea level. There's a few different scenic places to check out around this area, and it makes for a great place to stop and have a snack and admire the view and just enjoy the accomplishment of getting up to such a beautiful divide. So that is the main hike plus the campsites. And now in terms of photo ops, obviously we're already there. The Paintbrush Divide is of course a beautiful spot for photo ops. Holly Lake also is a really great one, and I personally love the clearing as you emerge from the forest back in the lower part of the canyon. Likewise, you also get lots of great options with creek crossings, and early in the season there'll be a lot more creek crossings with plenty more snow melting down into the lower elevations of the canyon. Now, some potential hikes that include Paintbrush Canyon, you could make a shorter hike out of going up to that clearing just within the lower Paintbrush camping zone, and that would be roughly 8 miles round trip. And of course, as mentioned, a common hike is up to Holly Lake, and for that you're looking at about 13 miles round trip. Now, a bigger challenge would be going up to the Paintbrush Divide, and that's close to 18 miles round trip with some significant elevation gain. Most people, if they go up to the Paintbrush Divide, they're going to connect to the North Fork of Cascade Canyon right on the other side of the divide and exit out Cascade Canyon. And this can be done as a lengthy 20-mile day hike, or most people do it as a backpacking trip, camping in either Upper Paintbrush Camping Zone or the North Fork Camping Zone. Regardless, this is one of the best loops in the Tetons, so if you're itching for some higher mileage, this is definitely one to check out. To do this loop, most people like to head up String Lake Loop to Paintbrush, go down the North Fork and down Cascade Canyon, which connects with the Jenny Lake Loop, taking that north and then back to String Lake. And most people prefer to do this loop going up Paintbrush and down Cascade because Paintbrush can be a little bit steeper and it can be a little tougher on people's knees if you try to go down Paintbrush. So that's pretty much everything you need to know about Paintbrush Canyon. Look for any relevant blog posts linked in the description below. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, definitely feel free to leave them down in the comments below. Thanks for watching and happy trails.